Welcome to the Mostly Pod Out at Night. Mostly, I am Graveyard, joined by my co-host Salem.
Hello.
This is episode 38 of our weekly All Things Horror podcast. They say if you know someone's full name, you can control them, whether it be demon, fae, or anything else. What happens when that does not even help? Let's dive into the world of corpses and entities that won't stay dead. So, this week we are diving into ladies' full names. The Taking of Deborah Logan, The Autopsy of Jane Doe, and The Possession of Hannah Grace. Somewhat related movies in a way, kind of all dealing with possession for the most part, right?
Yeah, and they all have heavy medical undertones. Like there's significant hospital footage significant hospital footage in each one of these, if you consider morgues to be hospital places, right?
Yeah. Coroners, morgues, and Alzheimer's, essentially.
Yeah. Well, I guess technically the autopsy of Jane Doe doesn't take place in a hospital, but it does take place in a morgue. So
yes. Yep.
Close enough.
Yeah. So, we'll be doing our normal recap, first thoughts. I haven't seen any of these until this week. I don't know about you.
I've seen the autopsy of Jane Doe. I had seen previously. I saw it around when it first came out.
Okay, I heard a lot about it, but we'll get into it. And this week we're doing a number of coroner's bells. Just because I thought that was a fun little joke in one of these movies, right? That they have for whom the bell tolls, and the idea of someone potentially still being alive and being old school and tying bells to the feet of the deceased.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was back. That was from back in the old days when the medical profession couldn't quite tell if you were dead or not. They're like, right. Oh, they're not moving, so I guess they're dead. That was it. That was their, professional opinion.
And sometimes a mirror to the mouth to see if they're breathing.
A mirror to the mouth to see if it fogs up. Yeah, and that's why they had the whole craze of making a air hole and a bell ringing thing for your coffin. So I think we make more of a big deal about it now than they did then, but it was still a genuine fear back then.
Well, I mean, we discussed this, episode 2 of this podcast, the premature burial and the works of Edgar Allan Poe, where a lot of his stuff is being based off of being buried alive. So I mean, he was writing about it at least back then.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, you look at, what's the fearful stuff about today, right? What are people scared about today, which is different than what they were scared of back then. Because right now it's like, being buried alive is a real fear, but it is a hell of a lot less prevalent now than it was back in Edgar Allan Poe's time. Like, it would happen, I'm not going to say often, but it would happen enough to where people would genuinely be scared of it.
Well, I mean, if you weren't dead when they cut you open and, embalmed you, you're dead then. So the Taking of Deborah Logan, I feel, has two different meanings of it because, Deborah Logan is an older woman. Holly Hunt's the daughter. And the mom's suffering from Alzheimer's. And this is a documentary style movie where Mia, who's interviewing her, is doing this for a dissertation on Alzheimer's and trying to see, but her like master's thesis is how it affects the caretakers of people with dementia and Alzheimer's, right?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, yeah. There's a whole bunch of reasons why she says it, but yeah, essentially, it's just a documentary documenting the downfall of a person with Alzheimer's and like the effects it has on everybody around them.
Right. So, like I said, it's in the same vein of, I'd say, Paranormal Activity started this idea again of the found footage, really took it off. We had a gap from, Blair Witch, we had a couple of them, and then Paranormal Activity showed that you can do it again, right? With newer technology, with the stationary cameras and the mockumentaries of horror movies that deal with it. So, there's essentially what's going on is, Deborah Logan is the elderly mother, and she has Alzheimer's. And, at first she's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be made fun of. And I don't blame her. Alzheimer's is, as we discussed on our April 1st episode, losing of your mind is a scary thing. And that's, my biggest fear is losing my mind to that state. I don't want to get to that state. It's terrifying.
You better start smoking then.
There you go.
Well, I said smokers have statistically less chance of having Alzheimer's.
Well then. But yeah, it's you notice that stuff is kind of weird. They're like, we don't want to do this, and they just go, the office stage where she's inside the house talking to her mom, and somehow they're able to hear them still pretty well. Saying, hey, we need to do this. We need the money. We need the help because it's expensive. She needs care. So yeah, we're introduced to the sound guy. I thought it's funny because they're staying in her house for, this is 47 days over at least. This is over.
I think total. I think it's like 60. I think the finale happens at like 60.
Yeah. So we get the days just like we do in Paranormal Activity of what day it is and stuff like that. I thought it was funny that the mom let them stay there, and there's a boys' room and a girls' room for the crew.
Well, yeah. She's old school, man.
She's very, yeah. So we're introduced to them. We're introduced to Harris, kind of her neighbor / friend that's been kind of there for her since the dad died. I don't know how long ago that was.
Well, the dad died when the daughter was 6.
Yeah.
So, considering the daughter is like, well, we'll say 46. She's in her 40s, so we'll just say 46. So it's been 40 years.
Right. So, we kind of introduced to Harris. They're kind of digging and burying stuff, all hush tones in the forest. And so, they're just interviewing them, talking about what it's like. We get Deborah's kind of backstory that she used to be an operator, that she'd patch people through. And, she was a way to disseminate information across people, saying that, how much things have changed. We've discussed all this at nauseum, I think, on this podcast, all the old switchboards and, your stories that you have seen what the switchboard rooms actually look like. And I would say that do we get introduced to the backstory of the doctor, the psychiatrist as well? That's been dead for about 40 years.
No, that's not yet. That's after the first naked episode.
Okay.
With the switchboard thing. Okay.
But before that part, they have cameras set everywhere, and they see, they're talking about like how, Deborah's mom almost burnt down the house. And Sarah is the daughter saying, you've done that before too. We've had to put stuff out. You left the stove on. And, they kind of notice some things not making sense. Like she's standing in front of the stove, and all of a sudden she's on top of the stove with 0 time skips in the tape. So, they have stuff recorded, and then just the next day they kind of go through and editing and, all that jazz. So it's not, 60 days worth of stuff all at once. And like, there's no time skip. She's just kind of on the ground, then she's kind of standing up. They kind of go, hey, do you remember this? She's like, no, I don't remember doing that. And just more kind of weird stuff starts happening. She also starts to speak. She kind of gets naked and starts speaking French a little bit. Right?
Yeah. I mean, well, basically it's, there's little stuff that happens to where they're like basically documenting her downfall into Alzheimer's, where it's showing her getting confused, showing her getting upset, angry when they like confront her with stuff. And it essentially all kind of culminates in an episode where they basically catch her. She like sleepwalks outside and digs a bunch of holes in the ground.
Yeah.
And then they bring her back in, and then when they bring her back in, she ends up like hurting herself by like tearing a chunk of her skin off.
She does that a lot in this.
Yeah, but the first time she does it is like off of her neck, and that's when they panic and they bring her to the hospital.
Yeah.
The hospital basically, the doctor says like, yeah, she's progressing like super fast. Like she's already in the mid range, which you're supposed to like. It's supposed to be a couple of years.
Well, yeah,
she's basically like accelerated within months to be in the mid stages, which is why she's getting worse.
Yeah, because it shows Sarah talking to the doctor. She's like, I thought this was going to take years. And they go, this just, yeah, you're right. There is accelerating at
right.
abnormal rate. Something's causing this. And we don't know what it is at this point in time.
Right. Yeah. And then that's when, like right after they come back at home, they wake up in the middle of the night to like that bizarre phone ringing alarm noise.
Yeah. And so she still has.
So they figure out that's from the old switchboard.
Yeah. She still, because she worked the switchboard from her house. And it was just one line, 337, whatever it was. And that's how we get introduced to the physician that 40 years ago was killed and ate 4 young girls. And he's doing this in a way to summon a demon or just to get eternal life, essentially. He's doing some sort of ritual.
Right.
To do that.
Yeah, because when the alarm goes off and they go and they eventually find her working the switchboard and she's naked, and then that's when she's screaming in all the different languages. And then they find out that the number that she was answering and calling during that time period was the number 337. And then they looked up in her old records for that 337. They couldn't find who it was. And the one guy used the MacGyver technique of like using, like charcoal and another piece of paper to like see what the impressions were. And then that's when they find out, 337 is this guy. And she had torn the pages out to like hide the fact that that this guy was one of her customers and that she used to take messages and stuff for that guy. And then that's when they go in further and they find out, he killed the 4 people, essentially like sacrificed them in like this old kind of native way.
In the hills.
Right. That was supposed to give him
immortality,
but he had to do it with 5 women to get the immortality, and he only did it with 4. And that's when they decode the languages that she was saying, because they recorded the whole thing. They translated the language she was saying. It was like French and Latin and German, whatever it was. But the voice was basically saying to her, "Be my 5th," like join the snake and stuff like that. So it appears that it's this ghost of this guy trying to get her to like be the 5th victim or something, I guess. At this point, we don't know, but
I really believe at one point in time, because they talked about how like he disappeared 40 years ago, which is about the same time the husband died, and that she had trauma, and that maybe, she was going to be the 5th at one point. That's what I gathered. That is a potential.
At that time, yeah. Right.
And so, they're just, after she gets hurt and she goes crazy and like brings out a knife and brandishes a knife against the crew. And, one guy goes, screw this, I'm out of here.
Yeah. And he just,
you don't need me.
Right.
Yeah. And you know what? Good for him. If you're on a documentary crew and you're seeing some strange shit and then all of a sudden she starts brandishing a knife and attacking you and trying to stab you, leave.
Oh, where's your sense of adventure? Come on.
I mean, yeah. So yeah, just stuff starts delving dark pretty quickly. That there's snakes. She gets snakes in the yard and starts having snakes in the house. So that snakes are definitely a part of it. And especially in old ancient lore, snakes are the demons or devils, right? Is always that kind of idea.
Right. Well, yeah, they also mentioned that the 4 girls that died had snakes carved into their head. So it was definitely part of the ritual.
Yes. And didn't they also have them like in their bodies as well?
Yeah. Well, yeah, they found snakes around the whole thing. Well,
right.
When they said when they eventually searched his house, he had snakes everywhere in his house.
Right. So yeah, I mean, stuff starts quickly ramping up at this point in time. I would say, um, to the point where what all of a sudden, they're out there. All of a sudden, someone starts shooting at the house, and it's a drunken Harris who's just shooting into the house.
Basically, the lady had progressed to the point to where she was just in the hospital at that point.
Yeah,
Like they literally had to like restrain her in the hospital because she's like several cases of her just like straight up attacking people
yeah,
for like no reason. So she was in the hospital like that, and Harris was very distraught over that, and that's why he was shooting their van or whatever.
right. And he's very drunk. You can clearly tell there's something going on between them. Cops come, and Sarah knows the cop. He's like, "Well, we're not gonna press charges." He's like, "You having a fun time?" Yeah, but their van got in the way. But he gets injured, does he not? Or no, he's in the hot. He's like, okay. He sobers up next day. He's in the hospital visiting Deborah. And there's more secretive stuff going on there. They kind of leave the room. He's in there, and she says, "You have to kill me." So he grabs a pillow and starts to smother her, right? But stuff starts looking very like demon-esque possession type stuff. He gets messed up bad.
Well, he gets hit with a TV, so yeah.
Yeah. So, he is, in the hospital because he's now severely injured. Sarah goes and talks to him, and, she's finding out all these clues about her mom and this physician that disappeared doing this, occult stuff. And, she's like, why are they digging in the yard? This is fresh dirt. This doesn't make any sense. They dug up and like, this is fresh. Like something was here and someone recently dug it up.
Well, yeah. Well, good. Yeah, because the big secret that he told her was that
she killed him.
Well, yeah, she killed him, but she killed him because the daughter was supposed to be the fifth.
Right.
And because I'm assuming they don't officially say this, but I'm assuming that because he was using her as the switchboard operator to do messages and shit like that, that she probably overheard something or whatever that would lead her to believe that she was going to be the fifth, which is why she, pulled all her records and burned it all, and then eventually went where the daughter was supposed to be, and then killed him, and then they buried him in the backyard.
Yeah. So eventually, so they find the body because they're in the house and they look up into the attic and there's a clear human shaped stain, by the stairs to the attic, right?
Even though the body was in a sack.
Right.
that was not human shaped.
Right. But it looked like a head and a torso, right?
Oh yeah, it did. I think that might have been, artistic license, maybe.
Maybe. But they get into the attic and they find a bag full of, it's kind of hidden between the rafters in the insulation. They open it up and they go, "Oh, yep, that's a dead body." And hey, look, there's snakes and shit, everything in here. This is what was the sack that we saw in the wheelbarrow beginning with Harris and Deborah, that they were burying him. Or like they had moved him because he's been dead for a long time, about 40 years.
Right.
And so they start to, you know what, we got to burn this body. We were told this is what has to get done. So, everyone's giant fireplace they start to light up. A whole bunch of snakes come out and hissing. And as they start to burn the body, the hospital calls because her mother escaped.
Well, and it basically the fire put itself out with this kind of kinetic blast.
Yeah.
And then they all got scared and ran out of the house, and there was like some kind of entity in the window looking at them as they were leaving the house. And then as they were all outside, like trying to figure out what happened, that's when the hospital calls.
Right. So them trying to burn the body, triggered, the possession of Deborah Logan to escape. And she takes a cancer patient girl as well. And they have video footage. She bites the neck out of a security guard, and they also show the footage where she's shackled and she just rips her skin off of her hands to escape.
Right. And the other interesting thing is they said the guard, the reason that he was like, unconscious or whatever is that he was in shock from snake venom.
Yeah.
So like her bite is venomous at this point, apparently.
Yes. So like, all right, they're missing a Toyota Corolla from the parking lot. And, so that she calls her sheriff, Sarah calls her sheriff friend, and they go, I think we know where she's going. She's going to the hills where the doctor was doing the sacrifices way back 40 years ago. So they follow her, they find the truck, lots of, shaky cameras, not showing a lot of stuff. Eventually go into like a cave system that's in the hills. The mother is clearly gone and very demon-esque in possessions, and has like jump scares that she tries to do and just disappears. Eventually they find her. They have to crawl through a very small tunnel that's just crawling with snakes. And they find her and they see her behind a rock, and her jaw is unhinged and she's starting to eat the little girl. She kills, I think the cop shoots at her and doesn't do much, and she ends up getting killed. The sheriff does.
To be fair, like she had the girl's whole head in her mouth.
Yes.
So it was very much
right.
Yeah.
So essentially, they realize, hey, she's definitely possessed, and the guy she's essentially a snake at this point in time, being on the hinge jaw and eat a person, or try to. They manage to get her off the little girl, and then they finally are able to burn the guy's body, the physician's body, and it works. And the mom seems to be in shock, but okay. So they, the little girl's returned. She has like a teeth mark in her head, but other than that, she's unscathed. And they go, okay, she's fine. They're going to try, send her to trial, but she's, medically unable to be tried just because she's deteriorating so fast. Kind of showing that the physician inside her just destroyed her body from the inside out. And we get a couple months later or a year later, and we see the little girl that had cancer, that she's all healed. She's celebrating her 10th birthday. Everything seems to be okay. And then she kind of just looks at the camera and smiles, saying that she has a plan, alluding to that the physician entity jumped into her. End of the movie, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
I mean, because she had leukemia, right?
Yeah.
And she got 100% better. So I wonder if somehow the ritual finished anyway.
Right.
I mean, he did kill other people there, so maybe they counted. I don't know.
Maybe. Or it's just he well enough that like him possessing the little girl, not immortal, but healthy enough to cure whatever she has. It's kind of open.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we don't know.
Right.
That's kind of what I was thinking, was that she's now immortal or something.
Yeah. Which I would say so, but why would she have plans? But anyway. So, my first thought, like I don't recall ever hearing about this movie. I watch a lot of horror movie lists, and I don't remember ever seeing this on anything. And I don't know how I missed this. It was a good movie.
Yeah, it was good. I've seen the cover art of it before. So like flipping through streaming services, I've seen it before. And it sounded interesting, but it never quite sounded interesting enough for me to watch.
Okay.
But like, yeah, the streaming cover art of it's like that red background with like the stylized kind of her face, when she's like taking over. Yeah, I've seen that part before, but I've never seen the movie before.
No. But I mean, I thought it was a fantastic movie. I thought, like I said, the taking of Deborah Logan had multiple meanings. It was, her being taken over by the ghost of the physician, the taking of her mind from Alzheimer's. So I think it had different meanings, and it was pretty good. I mean, what were your first thoughts on this when watching it?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, first time watching this movie is it was good. Like I said, I liked the way it was put together. It's found footage, but it's done well. It's like a lot of it is that goofy shaky cam stuff,
right?
Which it just looks like so amateurish. Like even like people like but we're doing a documentary. I was like, with that shaky cam, like who's gonna watch that thing? But yeah, no, they did a pretty good job. I mean, like everybody's pretty believable in the movie. Like there's actually a guy that like when weird stuff starts happening, he just like leaves,
right?
Like, straight up, he just like, nope, I'm out of here. And he does not come back to like save the day later on. No, he's just gone. He just leaves. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, yeah, again, everything that happens. I mean, there's they do what I like, which is when they have a lot of stuff behind the scenes they don't fully explain to you, which is good. It leaves just enough of mystery to keep it interesting. I think they may have given us maybe too much information about that pediatrician murderer guy. They could have had a better name for that guy. I don't know what I don't even know what his name is now. Like they said it like 20 times. I have no idea what his name was. It was something like very French and very goofy pronounced. I'm like, I don't know what the hell they're saying. I mean, thankfully they always did that they would show the picture of him on the screen whenever they were talking about him. Like, okay, we're talking about this guy. So it was like
Henry Desjardins.
Yeah, I don't know, but they were saying it all weird. It sounded like they were saying like Amid Arines or something. I don't know. I don't know what they were saying. Like, I don't know. But again, they showed his face usually when they were talking about him, and usually they just referred to him as like the pediatrician or something. So it made it a little easier to understand. But yeah, I don't know why they had to pick a goofy ass name like that.
Right.
Maybe to have the whole French thing in there, like that she was speaking French because she doesn't know French. So they made him French, but they could have had just like an easier French name.
Jacques Pierre.
Yeah, offending my, savage American, preferences, I guess. But yeah, no. Other than that, I thought it was good. I mean, it progressed nicely. I mean, it had nice pacing, tension, all that kind of stuff. It was all good. I thought they did a great job all around.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's just roll into the highlights then for you. Mm-hmm. So, highlights for you in this movie.
Highlights is, I mean, I like the portrayals of the characters. I really liked how believable they were. I also liked that the sound guy and the camera guy both survived, which is a rarity. And in all of these movies, the camera guy and the sound guy are usually the first people to die, almost always.
Oh, absolutely.
And then whoever the main character, I use that in quotes, the main characters, they take the camera and then they're just have the same exact skills as the camera person. Like it doesn't even matter that the camera person isn't there anymore. So it's very, very rare for them to survive, and for both of them to survive is extremely rare.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, even like the performance of like her having Alzheimer's before, obviously it progresses into like supernatural type stuff. Like it all very believable. Like, I mean, her performance was outstanding. I mean, just kind of all around, it was great. She plays a nice old lady, she plays a nice, person, suffering from, Alzheimer's, who's not quite coming to terms with it. She plays a good, evil entity, all around. She does a great job. And she's relatively, unknown, right? At this point in time, I don't really know who she is. I haven't seen her in a whole lot of things.
The only person I knew this entire movie was the daughter, Sarah.
Yeah, I had seen her in some stuff. I mean, minor stuff, nothing major, but I had seen her in some stuff before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I mean, there's things that you think are kind of leading into it, and they kind of pull those punches. So it's not exactly what you expect, which is nice.
Right.
They didn't have Harris kill the guy like she actually killed the guy, which is refreshing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And yeah, and to your point, like everything was done well. Like these movies can get pretty bad at times. Um, just because of the nature of them, right? The whole oh, have the lights off, have the lights on, and stuff like that. And you know, Paranormal Activity did it okay, but this, they leaned into the whole this is a true story. Here's snippets of crimes have happened. It's almost like became a true crime podcast at one point too when they're investigating the doctor, and it's just a really well meshed together storyline that was just it. It was a slow burn, but when it ramped up, it ramped up,
Right.
and we get a very potential bad ending, which makes sense because you think you're gonna be able to beat this entity you don't know. No,
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's not. Well, it's not quite a full bad ending. A full bad ending is like all the heroes are dead,
yeah,
and the thing that happens. So, but it's like that. That I don't know what I think you want to call it, like a sequel ending. So where like you think it's over, but then it's not.
right.
Not that there would be a sequel to this. I'm just saying that that's the kind of ending that it is, to where like there's a little stinger at the end, or like, oh, it's not over yet.
Right. And I like that, yes, people survive, but the, let's call it like a better word, evil necessarily didn't die.
Right.
So no, I like that. I'll go into my low points then. Snakes. I have where I live, there's a lot of garter snakes, and dogs get into them, and I just get rid of them. I would not be able to cross through the tunnel of snakes.
I mean, yeah, I'm not like afraid of snakes, but I also don't want snakes to be like on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't be a big fan of that. Quick aside, in real life here, when I was walking the dog in the woods today, I legit saw a snake's head that had been removed from its body hanging from a tree branch in the forest preserve.
It's a warning.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, like, am I trespassing on somebody's like ritual property here? Like, what the heck? But yeah, a snake's head, relatively fresh, like removed from the rest of the body, and then like attached to the tree, like stuck on the tree with like some of the viscera hanging off of it. It was not pleasant, but I just thought it was interesting.
You stumbled onto your French guys.
Apparently, I was like, this is bizarre.
Yeah. But what are your low points though?
My low points in this is just the portrayal of like law enforcement. Okay, if someone kidnaps a girl, I don't care if it's an old lady with Alzheimer's, I don't care who it is. If somebody kidnaps a girl and kills, or I should say potentially kills, a security guard or some form of law enforcement on the way out, there would be the entire police force of like the state, the county, and that town in those woods looking for that lady and that kid. I mean, there is no way around that. There's no way that just the sheriff and the deputy are just going to do it by themselves. And oh, hey, film crew, come on in our police car and come with us.
Right.
Like, there's no way in hell that would happen. That's not possible. So one, the I guess just complete lack of like, police ability to like do a search, and two, like, sure, jump in the back of our, truck and join our investigation. That's potentially, with murdered children and death. Yeah, just come on, hop in the back. We could use your camera, and you can film the whole thing.
Right. Yeah. That's not very obviously, hopefully not very common. um, yeah, like I said, overall though, I'm very happy I watched this. It was better than I thought it was going to be. Like I said, I didn't know really what to expect going into it. I didn't watch any trailers or anything like that. So, but yeah, let's get into our ratings of this. I'll go first. So, like I said, we're doing Coroner's Bells out of 10. This is a pretty solid movie. I'm going 8.5 Coroner's Bells out of 10. How about you?
I agree. It's decent. I don't think I'm gonna go that high. I'll go we'll go 7 Coroner's Bells out of 10. I
7?
thought
So a
seven.
rewatch.
Right. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely worth the rewatch. It was good. It was solid. I just don't think it was great.
So fair. So yeah, why don't you bring us then into the autopsy of Jane Doe?
Okay. Autopsy of Jane Doe. 2016.
Yes.
So, basically we start out with a father and a son. The father is played by Brian Cox. The son is by Emil Hirsch. Um, they're basically I guess there's 2 other characters that are kind of sort of in it, but they're barely in it. It's mostly just them. Essentially, they run like a father son morgue. So they're like coroners
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, but it's like the family business.
Yeah.
I guess they've been doing it for generations, and they do it out of their own house. So out of their basement of their house. So they have this like big kind of basement. So they have like all modern medical facilities. Like, it looks exactly like you'd expect a morgue and coroner's office to look, only it's in the basement of a house. But the basement is also very old. Like they showed pictures of the house like, 100 years ago, and it's still, it looks pretty much the same. So yeah, things have been built on and added to, but it's still an old house.
Right.
Anyway, so yeah, so it shows them going through their day. Shows them going through like an autopsy, which is, I mean, if you don't like gore, you probably wouldn't like this part. So there's, they go through like an autopsy of like a burn victim who turns out not to be a burn victim. He had like I don't know what, embolism or something. I don't remember what it was, but he had something that happened to him that caused him to die before he was burned in the fire. And he's like,
essentially the dad's trying to teach his son to not just look for the obvious, that there's other causes, and to be thorough,
right.
he's going to be taking over this practice.
Right. Yeah. So the son is like the apprentice to the dad, is essentially what we're showing here. So his girlfriend shows up, and they're going to go out and watch a movie, and go hang out, whatever. And then as he's on his way out, the sheriff comes in, who is Roose Bolton. I don't know his real name. So he brings this body in, and he says that he needs a cause of death by the morning, because this is like a, kind of important, crazy case, and he wants to have answers for the press in the morning. So, do it as soon as you can. And the dad is like,
do we open up though on the crime scene? I thought we do.
Well, yeah. In the very, very beginning, we see the sheriff looking through the crime scene and then finding a body being buried in the basement. Like it's a dirt basement being buried down there. And then now this is the body that he's bringing to them.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So he's out. He walks out the door. So the dad's like, "I don't worry about it. I got it." So he walks out front with his girlfriend and basically says, like, I can't just leave him alone. I have to go back and help him. But you come back at 11 and then we'll go out then. Like it shouldn't take that long. It should just take us a couple hours to get this done. Come back then and then we'll go out. She's like, okay, fine. She leaves.
Yeah.
And so they go down and they're doing the whole, autopsy thing where, they bring her in, they unbag her, put her on the table, like, clean her off, whatever. They kind of just go through the whole autopsy process. So they're looking at, the external, and there's nothing obviously wrong. There's no cuts, no bruises, no, blood or bruising, nothing like that. It looks just like it's standard, freshly dead body. They do find some minor things. One is that when they open up her eyes, they see that the eyes are like, that like milky dead eye, which usually only happens after several days of death. Unless you're in The Walking Dead, it happens immediately. But um, so that's what So it's obviously so it looks like she's been dead for several days. Only the body and the skin looks like she was freshly dead within hours. That's the first anomaly. The second thing they find is that her wrists and ankles have been shattered, as if they've been,
binded and broken.
bound and then broken and then whatever, torture essentially. But there's
no marks. Yeah,
no bruising, no scarring, no nothing. So it's again extremely odd. Like, how could this happen, right?
Yep.
So then that's the external stuff. They write down the notes. Oh, they also notice that her waist is really small. They're like, okay, well, we'll find out. We'll have a better idea as to why when we open her up. So then they basically start moving on to the internals. They cut her open and they see that her internal organs are all like scarred up. Like, it looks like somebody like stabbed all of her organs, but then they like somehow healed over.
And her lungs look like there's like been burned alive, smoker's lungs. That he said like 30 packs a day wouldn't do this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he said like this is like someone who died in a fire, like that level of black.
Yeah.
But yeah, and all the organs are like, again, stabbed and scarred and horrified. And he's like, I don't know how this could happen without any kind of external markings. So again, just kind of mysteries.
Well, also when they cut them open, the way the blood flowed it's like she's not dead. She's
right.
fresh.
Yeah. The blood flowed, and he's like, I've only seen this before when the body is like only like an hour or two dead, and it's usually just a pressure issue. And it was like, again, just surprising, just oddities.
Well, also her tongue was ripped out, not surgically.
Well, it was cut out. It was not surgically cut out, but it was cut out.
Very haphazardly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Not nicely.
Yes.
But again, it was like not fresh, but obviously recent. Yeah, so that they're okay, this is weird. So they take all the the organs out, as you do during an autopsy. And then they're moving on to the digestive system. They cut open well, I guess they found a fiber, like a fabric fiber in her mouth. And then when they cut open her intestine, they pull out like a little piece of fabric.
Yeah.
Which matches up to the one in her mouth. So like, yes, she was forced to eat this. And it's like got all these like weird symbols and letters and stuff on it. So there's like what they think are Roman numerals, but they don't know what they mean. There's like a big circle with like, symbols and designs. They don't know what it means. But her tooth was inside of it. Like this was wrapped around her tooth. So somebody pulled her tooth and then made her swallow it, covered in this piece of fabric, which, they, by the thread in their mouth, obviously was forced to eat it.
Right.
So at this point, they're like, okay, this is weird. And at this point is where we start getting like kind of weird stuff happening, to where like the radio that they're listening to is like telling them about the storm that's coming in, and it keeps like switching back and forth to like weird stations. It keeps playing that one song where it's like "Open Your Heart" or something.
Yeah.
This kind of weird little anomalies, strange things that are happening. I think the son goes off at one point because he's hearing noises, and he finds their cat Stanley was dead in the vents. And they like burn him in their crematorium. I think that was just the scene to just show that they have a crematorium there.
Right.
And then like as they're doing that, there's kind of weird like flashes of like hallucinations, essentially. Like the guy thinks he sees somebody standing around the corner, in like the mirror, and then when he goes around there's nobody there. Obviously weird stuff is starting to happen, is essentially what they're trying to get across.
Yeah.
So they get back in there, and they kind of, they're like, okay, well, let's just, continue with this thing. Let's just keep moving. And so then as they're, working through everything, they notice something on her skin, like on the inside of it. It looks like a tattoo or something. So they kind of peel away her skin and look at it. And it looks like the same symbols that were on that piece of fabric in her intestines are actually like tattooed on the inside of her skin.
Right.
And they're all like, oh, this is crazy, weird, and then the radio starts going crazy again. And then there's like this kind of big surge. And then all the lights in their little morgue area just blow out.
Yes.
So they, kind of get up like, oh man, what happened? They're both okay, but obviously they don't have any lights. The power has gone out. They don't know what's happening. So they try to sort of get out. And the storm has now hit, full blast. So they can't get out because obviously the elevator isn't working because the power isn't working, even though the generator kicks on, but the generator doesn't have enough power to power the elevator. And they can't get out of the, kind of old house, the old, cellar doors that they have that open up to the outside. They can't get through that because a tree has fallen on it. So they're basically trapped in there.
Yep.
So they go into the dad's office. And then they're, he's trying to make a phone call. He does get through to the police, but they're like breaking up bad connection. And then eventually it just cuts out completely. So like he doesn't know if they got the point across or not that they're trapped in there, but they need help. And at that point is when, I guess I kind of left out a little part. When the girlfriend was there earlier, she went in and she wanted to see one of the bodies. Yes. And the dad and the boyfriend was like, no, you don't want to see any of those bodies. And the dad was like, yeah, sure, go ahead, pull one out. And so they pull one out. She wants to see the one with the gunshot wound to the face. And they pull it out, and there's like a whole thing of like, she's looking and she sees like a bell on the foot, and he's like, well, what's this all about? And he's like, oh, well, this is an old tradition, the coroners, as we were talking about a little earlier, where, if the body's not quite dead, if they move around, you'll hear the bell ringing. So then they know they got a live one down there.
Right.
So he does the tradition of tying the bell to their foot, just as, like he said, he's a traditionalist. That's the way, he likes to do it the old way.
Yeah.
And so when she goes to pull the little sheet off of the face, he like rings the bell and she gets real scared, and they all laugh, and it's a good time. Anyway, so fast forward back to where we were. So they're sitting in there. The phone line is now cut off. They don't know what to do, and then they start hearing the bell jingling, which means that a corpse has gotten up and is walking around. And they're basically like, okay, there's enough weird stuff that's been going around. They don't want to take chances, so they like close the door and lock it. And the door is jingling, the bell is jingling down the hallway, and then it gets in front of the door and it starts like banging on the door like it wants to get inside. So they move this file cabinet over, and then they kind of retreat back in. The dad goes in the bathroom to like, I don't know, wash his face. I don't know what the hell he was doing. There's like a scene where they think that somebody's behind the shower curtain, but there's really not. But like right after that happens, the dad gets like pulled by some unseen force and the door slams. The son can't get in. When he does get in, he's like on the ground. He's all injured. And it looks like, I don't know, something hit him and like it messed up like all his ribs or something. Like all his ribs are like bruised.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's not in great shape, but they're doing what they can. And then eventually the file cabinet gets pushed over and the door is open. And the son sees this and then just kind of like doesn't do anything about it. Just sits there with his dad, and then they get up and they basically decide that all this weird stuff is happening. The only way that they can figure out what is really going on is to just finish the autopsy.
Well, do they try to burn her first?
Well,
or that's the point, right?
Well, yeah, I think they get to the point, and then they're trying to figure out more, and then they decide to do that afterwards.
Okay.
So they go back in there, they turn the light on, and they're basically, finishing the autopsy. So where they like the last part of the autopsy is where you skin the head and you cut the scalp off and you take the brain out.
Right.
Which they don't take the brain out, but they do cut a sample of the brain off, and then they check it under the microscope, and they see that the brain is still alive.
Yep.
Like completely alive. And at that point they're like, oh, like what is going on? And at that point he for whatever reason, he's messing around with the fabric that they pulled out of his stomach, and he folds it over. And that way he sees that when you fold it over, all of the symbols kind of match up. And they basically figured out that this says that she died in 1693.
Right.
Which was like, the height of the witchcraft era. And then, they kind of realized all the things fit. Like her tiny little waist is because she wore a corset, which was commonplace back then. Basically all these things that happened to her are all the things that they used to do to witches back in those days.
Burning of the stake. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So they basically figure out that like this person was probably not a witch, but in doing all of these horrible things to her, they basically made her into one.
Yes.
But because she's like dead, essentially her body's dead, she can't do anything herself. She can only like manipulate the world around her, which is essentially what's happening. And that's the point where they go, yeah, okay, let's just set her on fire so we don't have to deal with this problem. So yeah, they cover in all kinds of like flammable, whatever liquids that are laying around, and they light her on fire. The fire goes like all over the place, but doesn't actually burn her. So they put out all the fire that, lit everything else in the room on fire, and she puts herself out. And then now she's completely unharmed and back to normal.
Yep.
So yeah, at this point, they basically try to escape, but now like the bodies are out. The bodies have gotten out of the morgue and they're all over the place. And so they're kind of trapped in the morgue, and they have to like chop their way out with like a little fire axe thing that they got.
Right.
And yeah, they basically have to like fight their way through the smoke and through the bodies that are scaring them, and just popping up and banging on doors and stuff. They see like the one lady that had cancer, that had her eyes sewn shut. They see her like through the little hole that they chopped in the door. Anyway, just scary stuff. So basically the power comes back on, and so they decide they got to make a run for it. So they run to the elevator. They fall down, they get lost a couple of times, but they make it there. And they get in the elevator, and they're trying to go up. And of course, as the doors are closing, the power cuts out again. So they're just kind of sitting there with the door open enough for them to look out. And they hear the bell coming again. And you can clearly, well, not clearly, but you see that it's the guy with the blown out face.
Right.
But again, the smoke and the way that the lighting goes, because the lights are like going out as he's moving towards them. So you can't really see what's going on, but you can hear the bell. So as it gets closer and closer and closer and closer, and they're like, oh man, it's right on top of us. So the dad just like starts swinging the axe out of the elevator door and hits something. And he's like, okay, he's like, I think I got it. And then the lights come back on. They go out there, and it was the girlfriend.
Yes.
The girlfriend had come back, to see what was going on. I don't know why I guess we find out later, but in their mind at this point, they're like, why would she have come out in this horrible storm? And how the hell did she get down there?
Yeah.
But anyway, so, she's like dead. Yep. There's no surviving this. The dad feels real bad about it, but at this point he's like, whatever, I gotta get you out of here. Whatever happens to me happens, but we gotta get out of here. We gotta like survive this night. So basically at this point, I think, what do they do? I think they go back and they try to push open the door.
And the cops out there saying, hey, hold on, we're trying to get to you. And it's not really the cop.
Right. So they go back in the room, and basically they see that she's like now completely healed, like all of her cuts and everything.
Oh, they show the blood coming back into her body. Right.
Yeah. She's completely healed. And the dad basically gets the point of like, at this point, he just wants his son to live. So he just like talks to her because they're trapped in there. The bodies are back. They're trapped in the morgue again. And he basically, tells her like, just let my son live. You can do whatever you want to me.
Yeah.
And so essentially what she does is, I guess like possesses him in some way, shape or form, and then gives him like all of the injuries that she has to him. So like, yeah, he goes through all the stages of like, his hands, wrists and ankles are broken. His, insides are being stabbed. Like, you can see he's spitting out all this smoke when the lungs are getting blackened. Like all of these horrible things happen. And then as he's on the ground, like, dying a horrible, horrible death, he convinces the son to end it for him. And then the son stabs him with the scalpel and kills him.
Right.
And so at that point, the son is able to get out of the room because, I guess she was true to her word and all the bodies went away. So then he goes back out to the door. The cops are now saying, hey, open the door. We're here. Help us. And so he's like, I can't open it. And he's like, well, we moved the logs away. You should be able to open it now. He's like, I can't open it. And then he goes, oh, open it. And then he starts singing the Open Your Heart song that was on the radio earlier. And he realizes that this is just a big trick. Like this was, the cops were never out there. And then he turns and he sees, I think, her face, right?
No, his dad.
Oh, that's right. His dad's face.
Yeah.
And then he basically loses his balance, falls through a broken railing, and then lands on the ground and dies.
Yep.
And then we cut to the sheriff coming in later on. There was no storm. The radio was totally fine. The guy on the radio says like, "Oh, we have another perfect day, just like the
5
last
days of
4 days."
sunshine.
Yes,
yeah.
right. So like none of that stuff really happened. All the stuff that they think happened, as far as like things around them was just totally fabricated by this witch body.
Right.
So they basically just see, dead dad, dead girlfriend, dead son, and they just have no idea what happened. So then, they're like, oh, do you want to, send this to the other, funeral home morgue? And he's like, no, get this thing out of my county. He's like, send it somewhere else. I don't want it here anymore.
Yeah.
And then that's the end of
it. Well, and then it's ambulance, the song starts playing the ambulance and her toe twitches.
Right.
So another bad ending.
Well, yeah. Well, this one is, because everybody died.
Yeah. But you said this wasn't your first time seeing it. So what was your first thought seeing it on the rewatch as well?
I liked it a lot because it's you get these movies like this where it's like kind of an intense scenes between it's essentially between like two characters,
right?
Because the third is just a dead body on the table, and she doesn't interact with anything at all. It's just Brian Cox and Emile Hirsch basically reacting to the things around them and then talking amongst themselves, and they do a fantastic job.
Oh yeah.
The acting of this is top notch, but again, you get movies like this where the acting is not great or the writing is not great and it's horrible. It's a total drag because you don't want to deal with this. There's nothing to cut to. There's no other things to deal with. It's like you have to deal with these characters you don't like for the whole length of the movie, and it's horrible. But this one does it in a very, very good way. And you really care about what's going to happen to these characters. It's interesting. The whole autopsy thing is interesting.
Yeah.
Just the way that the kind of puzzle unfolds. The way that there's like all these kind of just creepy, wandering corpses around, which don't actually really like interact with them in any real way, but they're just there as like a constant kind of like ominous, scary thing. So essentially, it's just it's basically just all in their mind. Like nothing physically happens to them other than the dad getting hurt.
Right.
But yeah, nothing physically happens to them other than basically just being scared and them falling down and stuff.
But on your rewatch, was it just as good for you, or was it better?
No, it was or
the same.
Because I knew what was going on. I knew it was going to happen. It had been long enough where I didn't remember all the details, so it was still really fun. Like if I watched it again like tomorrow, it might be a little bit less. But I watched it probably 2-3 years ago. And it was just as good this time as it was that time. So it holds up.
Yeah, I have actually heard of stuff of this, but I don't think I remember the twist with her being essentially made into a witch.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting that it was a witch, because it really seemed like it was like a demonic possession, like she was being exorcised on a lot of the stuff, but it just turns out to be a witch. But no, I agree. This was fantastically acted. It was essentially, you said two characters, so it was a what do they call that type of episode in TV, where it's essentially
Bottle episode.
bottle episode, but it's a bottle movie, but done really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
Had potential to be awful because, as you said, if done horribly, they're awful. But this is done perfectly, I think. And yeah, I'm definitely glad I watched it. I think everything of it was fantastic, and I think they really portrayed, like, what happens in there. The son not wanting to be in the family business because the mom had died, and he's just there helping the dad out. So it had character growth and background while still being essentially a bottle movie. So it was perfectly well balanced, I think.
Yeah, I like it. Right, there's enough stuff going on so they don't fully explain everything that's happening, but you get bits and pieces to know, where they're at, headspace wise, and it's great. It's just enough. It's just right.
So what are your highlights?
Highlights. Like I said before, just the acting is obviously. I mean, really, because essentially there's like four real characters here, where there's like Roose Bolton, the sheriff, and then the girlfriend, but they're kind of not really in it. They're in she and him are in the beginning, but it's most of the vast majority of the movie is just the dad and the son, and then at the very end, I guess the girlfriend kind of comes back, but really only as a corpse. She doesn't even say anything in that scene where she dies. She's just dead. Right. And then the sheriff comes back for his like the little closure thing at the end. So there's really not much else than just them two, but they, again, stellar performances from both of them. But yeah, I mean, just the idea of it. I mean, just the whole kind of scientific breakdown of the autopsy and them just going through the processes and then basically finding things that don't make sense in every stage of the autopsy.
Right.
It's just interesting. But them still trying to kind of, okay, well, maybe it's because of this, or maybe it's because of that. Well, I guess this is technically possible, just kind of moving forward when they really know that they should not be. They know that things are wrong and something is definitely seriously wrong, but the way that they keep going is just, it's again, it's just good filmmaking. It's just fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. It's not a logical leap into the supernatural right away. They take their job very seriously, and they're going, oh, that's going, I've seen cases like this before, and it was, human trafficking, and that's why maybe the legs and the hands were broken like that, and that's why the tongue was cut out and stuff like that, and they just kind of eliminate the possible.
Right, but the thing is like, again, but he always corrects himself. He's like, but I've never seen it without any bruising or scarring before, Right. But again, they know that something is wrong. They know that something is not quite right. But it's like the skeptics version of a horror movie, where like, nah, I'm not gonna jump into supernatural territory yet. We'll just keep going. Maybe we'll find something to explain it as we keep going. And they keep finding things that don't make sense, and they just keep going anyway. It's an interesting twist on it.
Right. And I thought the twist was good that it was a witch. You expected it to be a ghost or a demonic possession.
Well, yeah, and you also expected her to, get back to life, right? And like do things physically as a normal witch. Like, like she was just like resting or in a state of torpor, like or healing herself, whatever it is, that she was going to get up and act as a normal person. But no, she doesn't. She's just a corpse. But her brain is active and she can manipulate the world around her, but she can't, her body is dead.
Right. Well, but you never assume that maybe with her toe twitching that she's starting to understand her powers. Eventually, maybe come back.
Maybe. I mean, if this happened to her in 1693, she's learning real slow. If we're talking,
maybe she was buried this entire time.
We're talking like 300 years.
Yeah,
and she learned how to twitch a toe. So like maybe in like another 500, she can like kick a leg out.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, she'll be dangerous in like a couple millennia.
Yeah. All right. What about low points for you?
Low points is the poor cat. I mean, I just it felt unnecessary to just like kill the poor cat off. I mean, they even showed it like with like dead rats and stuff, like that was hunting in the vents. Like they could have just like showed that they have a crematorium with that thing.
Yeah.
They didn't have to just kill the poor cat. They didn't even like link it to her at all. It
No.
was just a dead cat. It was just, it was just unnecessary, I thought.
Yeah. Low points? I don't know. I think the atmosphere was fantastic. The acting was fantastic. There's not. Yeah, I mean, I guess the cat died to show that, but they also kind of used it as this is the last thing of your mother's. Now it's dead, so I have to cremate it because it's my job. So, I mean, yeah, I guess using a dead cat as a plot point, not necessary.
Well, again, I think they could have got the plot across in other ways, but again, I mean, that's a relatively minor gripe in an otherwise good movie.
Yeah. All right. So, how many corners bells out of 10 do you give this movie?
I will give this movie, we'll say 8.5 corners bells out of 10.
Yeah, I'm going to 9. I like this one more than Taking Deborah Logan, and it's going to be on my rewatch list at some point in time. So that, especially with the wife wanting to rewatch it and not seeing all of it.
Yeah, no, it's just it's just a fun movie, just well made. It's a fun ride, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's not unnecessarily long.
Yeah,
it's a good time.
Yeah, so I was very pleasantly surprised by it. All right, well then let's go into our last movie of the ladies' full names is the Possession of Hannah Grace, where we'll kind of tag team this. I'll say I was honestly distracted probably the last 15 minutes of the movie from other life things. But we kind of start off with we get the possession of Hannah Grace. She's possessed. Movie done, right?
Yeah, it's over.
An old priest and a young priest performing the exorcism on Hannah. She has kind of like what's wrong with her eyes? Her eyes are kind of just like neon blue, I would say.
Well, one is neon blue.
Yeah.
One eye is neon blue.
And she's supposed to have, brown eyes. And it's a little bit of an exorcist scene, a little bit where she pretends to get better, but no, it's just a trick by, the demon. She essentially kills I'd say the older priest, through her power and levitation, and then just like impales him.
Yeah. I don't know quite what impales him, but she slaps him up against the crucifix, and something, goes through his head and kills him immediately. So I don't know what that was, but something was there.
Yeah, and then she starts pulling out a Darth Vader on the other priest and just kind of choking them out. And her dad, older, he seems older. She seems pretty young.
Well, okay, he seems like 50s.
Yeah,
right? And she's like
16.
No,
maybe
she's not that young. She's like 20 something, early 20s, I would say.
But the dad is saying, "Hey, you have to fight it," and he's not doing anything. So he gets another suffocation attempt by Pillow.
Mm-hmm.
This time has a scripture written on it, and essentially he kills her, and the other priest survives, and she's seemingly dead, and possession gone, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, and then after that it just cuts and goes 3 months later.
Right, and they go, "Oh, well, that was a very quick possession of Hannah Grace. What's next?"
Right, like what's going to happen 3 months from now?
Yeah. So we get introduced to the actual main character of the movie,
right?
Which is not Hannah Grace. And it is Megan, who is meeting a friend at Boston Metro Hospital, where she's interviewing to be essentially a mortuary assistant, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah,
She's,
basically the
tagging,
overnight, the overnight morgue person that takes in all the dead bodies, which, um, I don't know. I'll discuss it later, but I
yeah,
don't know who doesn't understand that like hospitals, like nighttime is like their busiest time.
right.
Like they always show hospitals at night. I mean, I don't know how many countless movies do this. I mean, we're talking Halloween 2, right? We're talking this movie. We're talking every other movie that takes place in a hospital. There's no one around. You know, like they show like,
Yeah.
oh, there's one dead guard or one dead nurse, and then they never encounter any other hospital staff the entire rest of the movie. It's like,
Yes.
have you ever been in a hospital at night? There's people everywhere.
Yes.
Everywhere. And
We say that every hospital scene of doing 38 episodes of this podcast is a dead hospital. It
right.
really
It's
is.
like there's no one ever there. Like at night, there's no one there. It's like, okay, at nighttime hospitals are busy as hell. There's all over the place. There's like most shootings and like overdoses and all that shit happens at night.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't quite get that. So yeah, so she's working the morgue by herself in an overnight shift, which I don't know if that's
No.
whatever. Yeah, I don't get it. But yes, that is her job.
Yeah. So I mean, so she gets interviewed and she immediately gets the job. He kind of goes over. All right, here you take the pictures, you do markings, you put the notes in, you tag them, bag them, essentially, put them into the lockers, and then wait for me to come in the morning. I'll go over your notes and do the full autopsy. So she gets her first night, and then, she kind of goes home. She's woken up, and it's another cop who was romantic interest. We learn a little bit backstory of her that she was essentially discharged, or she left because her patrol partner got killed because she didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah, they leave that part kind of open, but essentially there's probably two possibilities here. One is that she was just so scarred by what happened, because when a horrible thing like that happens, like if you're, a cop and the guy turns and shoots your partner, it's like the whole fight or flight thing, right?
Yeah.
Which is, it's technically, it's not two options, there's three, because there's always the middle option of freeze. Like you can't do anything and you don't know,
right.
Your body like malfunctions and can't process it. And that's what happens. Sometimes it happens, right? But so it happens to her. And so either one, she leaves because she feels like she let her partner down, or two, they also show that she has an alcohol and drug problem. So maybe she got kicked off the force because she had a problem after that. I mean, maybe it does. It leaves it open. Regardless, she's no longer a cop.
Right, and the nurse that helped her get the job is her AA sponsor as well.
Right.
So that comes into play later. So I just had to make sure we mentioned that. So essentially, then she, he's like, are you sure you should be doing this? Are you abusing? Lots of, I'd say, questioning of that.
Well,
but
these are questions of like, she's obviously going through something, right? So he's just concerned. And then we get the thing like they used to be together and that he moved out, and she's like, you're the one that moved out. And he's like, you didn't give me much choice, which who knows what really happened there. But obviously it was, kind of ended on a sour note, but not quite sour enough for them not to talk or anything.
Yeah. So, we're introduced to, not a large cast. I would say discount Carrot Top security guard.
Right.
You remind me of Carrot Top. Let's face it.
He had a red afro. That's the only other red afro I know, besides a clown.
Yeah. So she's on her second job. I don't remember his name, Dave or something like that. Or Ernie. I think it's Dave. She's, her job essentially is to watch the entrance, the ingress of, ambulances or any corpses coming in. So she has to monitor all the stuff. She gets a notification that there's someone out there, but she looks at the camera and she doesn't see anything. So she goes to the door and a hooded figure starts pounding in. It's like, hey, you gotta let me in. I forgot my key card. She's like, you don't work here. At her second day.
Well, right.
All right. And so it starts slamming on the door, like, let me in, gotta let me in. And, she calls security guard or someone, or the cops. You got a lot of homeless people try to get in there, so just ignore it. Then she sees an ambulance pull up, and the guy goes, "Hey, I'm by myself. Can you help me load this body out?" She's like, "I can't leave my station. I can't do that." "Oh, stickler for the rules, huh?" The last guy wouldn't do it. And she ends up doing it, but she leaves the door open, and you see a shadowy figure, presumably the presumed homeless guy, kind of go in. And she does it, loads the body, and then she starts kind of going over the 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 corpse, right, and start doing her thing. But she that's what happens next.
Yeah, well, yeah, she brings in the corpse, and then she tries to do the processing stuff. So she brings it in, and she tries to like take the pictures like she's supposed to, and the camera doesn't work.
Right.
And then she takes her fingerprints, and then she tries to scan them into the system, and the system breaks.
Yeah.
So yeah, she can't do the pictures, can't do the fingerprints. So she's like, okay, well, system's down. I'm assuming there's no overnight IT, I guess. So like they'll just end that over. So she just bags her up and then puts her in the drawer.
Yes. What is this when she kind of calls her cop ex-boyfriend to get information? Oh, she tries to log into the police system. She tried using her old login, which didn't work, which kudos to the IT team for locking her out after.
Well, not yet. This doesn't happen until she has the attack with that guy that had come in. That attack happens. He tries to essentially, like, it's kind of a creepy thing to where, she hears a noise. She goes in the morgue, and the drawer is open where the body, she just put it in there. And then she looks and sees the body moving or being dragged through another door. And she sees that the guy, the hooded figure, has dragged the body into the crematorium and is going to try to throw her into the because of course the crematorium is there. So she's going to try to throw her in there. They obviously have a fight where the guy is like trying to kill her with a knife, and eventually she gets the knife away, and then he's like trying to strangle her. And then finally security comes down because she had said, call the police. There's a person in here, but then hung up before they could say anything else. And so then, they have like a showdown where he's choking her, and then they finally come in and stop him and then arrest him and take him out. At that point, she puts the body back in the morgue, and then the boyfriend comes there to check on her afterwards. They're like, hey, a cop is here to talk to you. And he comes in there to check on her, and he's like, well, is there anything I can do? And that's when she says, yeah, here, take these fingerprints and scan them into the system. Because when she was looking, because she used his login earlier to check on her, and she sees that on her license, it says that her eyes are brown, but when she looks at the one eye, it's blue. So she thinks that's something. Go ahead.
And we find out that it's Hannah Grace.
Right. Well, that's Hannah Grace is the body, and it's, obviously her eyes are blue, very obviously. And then on her ID in the system, it says brown, so it doesn't match up. So that's why she wants him to scan these fingerprints, because she thinks it's like either a case of mistaken identity or something.
Right.
She doesn't know what it is at this point, but she needs these fingerprints to find out more. And then
we should also notate that there's a big lash on her side, Hannah's side.
Yeah, there's a big gash on her side. There's a big gash in her neck.
Yeah,
like her one side of her whole body is burnt. Her one brown eye is burnt closed. So only the one blue eye is the only eye that's functional. Well, I shouldn't say functional because she's dead, but the only eye that you can see.
Right. And when she finds out doing the research that she died during the exorcism, that was months ago, and that they're just now getting the body.
Well, that was later on. That was later on.
Okay.
Her friend comes down and helps her with lunch. I think just well, I should say lunch, but lunch in the middle of the night.
It's their lunch break.
Well, it's their lunch break. But they, just kind of like, going over like, hey, are you okay? Are you, doing everything? Is everything all right? They have like a weird scene where she finds her she had a bottle of Xanax that
Which she
had
took from her ex-boyfriend.
right. Yeah, she took from her ex-boyfriend, and she's like, okay, well, is there anything I should know? Like, have you been taking these? Because she's like trying to tell her that she's seeing things around the morgue.
Yeah,
like,
she's seen the body. She's seen Hannah's body just kind of briefly on the camera.
right. Well, yeah, she sees the shadow on the ground, and that's what she has got an actual camera like focus on because she gets the whatever the code from the security guys to see all the cameras. And so she's looking at all the cameras, because the lights keep turning on and off because they're on sensors. I guess it's kind of an ongoing thing in the movie. That lights are on sensors, so whenever there's movement, they turn on. And so they're like turning on randomly, and she's trying to look to see what's going on. And she sees that, she shows the lady. The lady thinks she's probably on drugs or something, and that's why she gets dismissed at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it basically keeps progressing from there.
Yes, and she has to, when she's meeting her friend, she leaves, Carrot Top, security guy, to look at it. He throws a ball, and he's kind of dragged all over the place and essentially crushed in Hannah's slate.
Right, yeah, dragged into the morgue drawer and crushed to death, right.
Right.
So yeah, they come back from lunch. Yeah.
Yep. But that's why she also had the camera, because Dave was missing. The other guy's like, I can't leave my post. Here's the book, how to do all this stuff. That's where she saw all the stuff.
Right.
I think she also goes to the bathroom and she starts hearing things, seeing things while in the bathroom.
Right. Yeah, there's a weird scene of her in the bathroom where her pants are like all the way down, which is kind of unnecessary for a spooky bathroom scene, but it is, I guess. And then when things start happening, she just pulls her pants up. Like, I'm like, ew. Yep. Not getting wiped, nothing.
Yeah. So
anyway, spooky things are happening.
Right. So, yeah, and that's why, she starts doing that, and that's when people start dying.
Well, yeah. So, obviously, Dave, the security guard, gets killed. Her friend goes in the stairwell for a smoke. And then dead Dave bleeds on her from higher up in the stairwell. And she goes up there, and then, she gets killed there. But, obviously the Megan doesn't know about this.
Right.
This is just happening off screen. Her ambulance buddy comes back to drop off another body. Drops off a body, and then he goes to leave. Well, she, shows him everything that's going on. She shows him that.
Right.
Hey, look, she had this big cut on her side. Yeah, she had this big cut on her side, but now it's healed. Like, do you remember the cut? He's like, yeah, I remember that. That's weird. That's weird. Do you have pictures? And he's like, oh, the camera didn't work. And he's like, oh, that's strange.
Yeah.
So then he goes back out to his van to leave, and then the van shuts down, and he can't move.
Yeah.
And then he gets out and basically gets chased all around the parking garage by Hannah Grace's, body, which is now animated and moving around. So yeah, he gets killed too. But again, Megan doesn't see this or know this because it happens outside the camera room.
He gets crushed by the ambulance, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
He gets killed. And at this point, that's when the boyfriend calls back saying that they got the prints back and that Hannah Grace died 3 months ago. Right. He's like, oh, well, it must be a glitch in the system or something, because that doesn't make sense, because obviously that body was fresher than, 3 months.
Correct.
And he's like, oh, okay, well, obviously something weird's going on. We'll check it out. And then that's when she goes to check on the body, and then she sees that the body is healed again.
Completely.
Right.
Yeah. Almost completely.
Right. Yeah, almost completely. So she knows something crazy is going on. So then she goes out. I think when she looks at the camera, she sees the end of the ambulance or something. Anyway, she goes back out to check on the guy. And when she goes back out there, the hooded guy had escaped from prison. I think the police boyfriend guy warns her that he escaped and he's probably on his way there. So he gets there and he's got a gun and he puts it in her face, and essentially, he goes, or she goes hey, I believe you. I believe what's going on. I know what you're trying to do. You're just trying to kill her for good. I know the murders weren't you. I'm
right. And
we're basically
that's when
help
we get revealed that it's Hannah's dad.
Right. Yeah, it's her dad, and then he's
Yeah.
trying to like end it.
Finish the ritual. Yeah.
Finish the ritual. So then, wackiness ensues, but eventually they get the body to the crematorium because basically,
Yep.
like, he explains that, like, yeah, she gets up and she kills, and that the kills heal her, not completely, but heal. Each kill heals her a little bit, but she has to like rest after each time that she does it. That's why she like is
Right.
dead in the drawer for a while, and then she keeps coming back to kill because she has to keep healing. So yeah, there's like, standoff where they're fighting back and forth. They go to the crematorium to try to put her in there, and she's fighting the dad back and forth. The dad somehow gets inside the thing.
Yeah, she kind of like puts him on the slate and then shoves him into it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so then there's fights back and forth. But Megan eventually gets Hannah in there as well and pushes her in there, which I don't know. People don't understand how like safety protocols work on like a crematorium. Like, there's no way that thing would be running with the door open.
Correct.
There's no way. But
yes.
And even if it was, the heat from that thing is so intense that if your hands were anywhere near where the actual flames were, they would be burnt to a crisp.
Melted.
Right. And she is just like literally like an inch away from the flames, like just not even reacting at all. So anyway, eventually wrangles her into the crematorium and then puts it in there. But there's kind of like this overarching thing of the reason she didn't kill Megan is because, Megan was depressed and upset. And apparently the dad said that, well, Hannah was depressed and upset, and that's what let the demon in. So maybe he didn't kill you because he is trying to take you over or feels a kinship with you in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, eventually she gets forced into the crematorium and burned, and then she just kind of waits there playing with her rubber band ball until the police show up.
Yes.
And then
and then there's a fly. There are flies throughout the movie. There's fly on her eye, and then she has like hallucination of flies leaving Hannah's body, just like a swarm of them.
Right.
And so I think it's alluding to that maybe the demon moved on to her potentially because she also was in the same state that Hannah was, so maybe it moved into her. I think it's kind of a little open-ended at the end.
Yeah, they leave it open-ended, but there's nothing definitive. Like, they don't even hint it definitively. They just kind of show you that there's, I guess, the possibility of.
Right. Yeah. I'll go first. The first thoughts. This was an interesting movie. Once again, didn't know anything about this. I don't know how I'm missing some of these. I don't know if it's just because at this point in time, I got so sick of like exorcism movies because they made a big resurgence again.
There was a few years there where there's a lot of them. I think this one is outside of that because I think this one was 2018.
Yeah.
But I remember there was a lot of those like.
Yeah,
some of them
Deborah
were like
Morgan was in one.
Yeah, there was like some of them were like found footagey. Some of them were just like but it was essentially like the new exorcism wave. Like, a lot of them came out.
Yeah, because we had last Exorcism 1 and 2, which is the found footage one.
There was the one of like was that Emily Rose,
which I believe was Deborah Morgan from Dexter.
Okay, yeah, there was. But there was a bunch of those types that came out right in that same time period. I think it was a little bit before this one, but I can definitely see your fatigue by seeing it.
Yeah, but I mean, this is also the same time frame we also started getting introduced to The Conjuring with Ed and Lorraine Warren, which were all demon possessions as well. So it was still kind of in that line. So I tend to have skipped these for a bit. It looks like.
I don't know. I don't think I ever even heard of this movie before. It doesn't sound familiar.
No.
I mean, like checking lists and stuff, it is on there, but I don't think I had ever heard of it. I don't think I had ever even seen it, because there's a lot of movies that I've seen, like, skipping through, looking for somebody to watch it. I don't even remember seeing this one. So.
No, but I mean, overall, it wasn't, I need to watch it again. Usually when I start watching these movies and the wife watches part of it, she's like, oh, I want to see all of it. So I'll eventually end up watching it all again. I mean, it wasn't a bad movie, and I'm glad I waited as long as I did because like I said, the possession fatigue had kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're going to be getting these back in, especially with the new Exorcist coming out this year. But I mean, overall, it wasn't a bad movie. It was an interesting take on the possession that they're able to briefly kill and heal up a little bit. So, I mean, it was a different twist or different lore that I think I've seen in a possession movie. What about you? I mean, what are your first thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this really isn't like a possession movie. I mean, because possession movies are usually like, the person is possessed and they're like trying to save them, right? That's
Right.
usually how those things work. Like, we know they're possessed. Like, this one is like, we don't know that that body is possessed. We just know that goofy things are happening around the body, which obviously we know was possessed because we saw the beginning of this movie, but obviously
Right.
Megan did not see the beginning of the movie, so she didn't know what was going on. But yeah, it's just like a corpse and wacky things happening, and it's like a slasher for that period of time. I'd say that it's basically a slasher overall with just the possession kind of undertone.
Yeah, it's accurate.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, essentially that's what it is. So yeah, it starts off like, I mean, the very first scene is an exorcism movie. I mean, but like when she dies, the exorcism movie ends, and then, and then the slasher begins after that. So I guess it's like one mini movie and then one normal movie. But yeah, no, not bad, not bad. I mean, I was prepared for the worst because Rotten Tomatoes for the Taking Deborah Logan and the Autopsy of Jane Doe are both pretty good. And then this one, it's like 20%.
Wow!
I was like, oh no, is this gonna be bad? But it's not. It's nowhere near that bad. I mean, I don't know. Some of these movies, I don't know who is judging these things, but like some of these critics get crazy. Like they expect every movie to be breaking new ground. It's like, of course they're not going to do that. You got to look at if is it good? Is it worth watching? Like not like if it blows your mind. I mean, obviously as a critic, you need things to blow your mind because you watch so many movies. I understand that, but I think they have to be a little bit more fair to some of these other movies because some of these movies get destroyed by the critics and they're not bad. Again, they're not breaking new ground. They're not blowing anybody's minds, but they're not bad movies.
No, we seem to be at odds at times with the critics. We're going, what, they rated this highly? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
And then other times, like, they rated this low?
Yeah, there are
good.
There are so many movies like that. I mean, just recently, I'll tell you, did you see Bohemian Rhapsody?
No.
Okay, it won awards, man. Like everybody was talking about how great this movie was, right? And it was going to blow you away. Like I like Freddie Mercury. I like Queen. Like, okay, I'll watch this movie. It is horrible. It is horrible. I was watching it with my mom and my brother. We're all like, we took like an intermission break and we all looked at each other like, are we all thinking the same thing? Is this movie just really bad? And I'm like, yeah, it's terrible. And they're like, okay, good. I thought I was the only one. Like we all agreed it was horrible. It was a terrible, terrible movie. It just like it just skips over all the really interesting parts of his life, and it's just so boring. It is no way would it ever be an award-winning movie, but critics loved it. Like across the board, critics gave it outstanding reviews, and it is just an objectively bad movie. I think that was the one. I mean, I didn't like to agree with critics. I didn't really listen to what they said before that point. But after that point, I just completely disregard it. Like I don't even think about what they say because they obviously are not in touch with what I think about movies. So after that, I just
especially horror movies.
Yeah, horror movies again. Horror movies, a lot of times they get very formulaic. They follow the same pattern. Like one movie will do well and they will have like 20 movies that follow the exact same pattern, just trying to like recreate that money. But with horror movies, they cost little to make. So like if they cost so little to make, even if you're making a tiny fraction of what the actual hit made, you're still making money. So that's why there's so many of these, garbage remakes and garbage formulaic, movies that are exactly the same as all the other ones because they're still making money. Even those direct to video horrible, Death Trap-esque, movies are again, they're terrible, but they still make money. And that's why they keep doing it. That's why they keep making really bad ones because even the really bad ones make money. Yeah. It's just a very easy genre to make money in, which is why there's a lot of bad versions of those movies.
Yeah. So, I mean, what were your highlights of this movie?
Highlights is I don't know if that's the actual Boston hospital. I highly doubt it. But that is the most like gothic dungeon looking hospital I have ever seen.
Right?
Like all the walls, like the color scheme, they were like, okay, give me old dingy water stained concrete walls. Like, here you go. I mean, that's the entire place, and all the walls looked like they were like ancient old water stained dungeon walls. I mean, the whole thing, it looked like a dungeon. So I mean, and the morgue was like expansive. It had like, how tall were those ceilings?
Oh,
Like
20
30
feet?
feet tall. I mean,
Yeah.
they were huge.
Yeah.
I mean, like the lights were hanging at 20 feet and they were hanging 10 feet from the ceiling. I mean, it was like, who is wasting all of this space on a morgue with this color scheme? I mean, don't get me wrong, I love it, but like, what? Like, hospitals are
Yeah.
always low on space. They would not waste all this space for a morgue. But again, I kind of doubt this is the actual hospital. I don't think they filmed in the hospital. They must have filmed in some other building, but it looks cool. I really like the look of that building. I really like the kind of vibe that it really puts the movie in a certain space already. You know, just looking at that morgue puts you kind of on an unease, I would say. So yeah, kudos to
That's very
whoever.
atmospheric.
Yeah, like kudos to whoever found that place and made it the morgue. Because
Yeah.
it really does set the tone for the whole movie. Just just that space that they're in.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
it's, you have other highlights?
Highlights? No.
Okay.
I like this space. I like the aesthetics. Um, yeah, no, well, yeah. Well, there's one that's like borderline. But I'll do that one later. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I mean, you're right. I mean, we discuss atmosphere from the older movies and how a lot of stuff is very lacking in it in modern horror movies, right? And but you're dead on that the atmosphere is like you felt you're working the graveyard shift in like the worst morgue possible.
Right. Even though it was like super new and like super
Right.
futuristic, but it was like in a like super futuristic in a dungeon. It was it's a bizarre twist to it, but yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, and I think they did a great way of explaining why she couldn't do new technology, really, either. You know, that even the technology was being busted. And that's kind of hinted at lore wise in a lot of demonic possession stuff that they're able to, electronically interfere with things. But yeah, I mean, she wasn't very, because she's not, a lot of shit happened on her second day.
Right, yeah. But I mean like who would okay, a job that's that important. I mean like intaking like dead people, like doing their fingerprints, taking pictures of their injuries, like, cataloging and putting them in a morgue. Like that's a pretty important job. I mean, like a lot of things can happen that could like totally destroy cases if it's
Yeah,
done wrong. And you're leaving her alone on her first night. Like you should have at least a week of shadowing someone else, right? I mean,
yeah,
at the very least, like he basically gave her like a casual walkthrough in the job interview. Okay, like that. It was like he showed her how it worked in the interview, and then said, "You're hired. You start tomorrow." And she had to work by herself
yes.
immediately with no experience. Yeah, I mean
Well, I
that's
will say that
ridiculous.
this is the I don't know if you ever played the game The Mortuary Assistant.
No.
That's exactly what happens in the game. Like exactly. So I mean, it was like a live action.
What year did that game come out?
Oh, what year did that come out?
Is it recent?
I think it is recently. It came.
Maybe whoever made it
Yeah,
watched this movie and then made a game based on it without actually basing the game on it.
I think it came out. Um, yeah, because she's the intake, and she does the basic stuff on it. Uh, I think it came out in 2022.
Okay, so we discovered where they got this idea from.
Yeah,
So, feel free to sue them based on our investigative discovery that we have found. Because I mean, that sounds
played
like
this game.
That sounds like way too close to the movie to not be directly related to it. Because again, if you're talking, this movie came out 2018, the game came out 4 years later. That's about development time.
Yes.
So yeah, we're talking. They saw this movie. They made a game based on this movie without naming it, and then again, I haven't played it. I can't judge it that harshly. I'm just saying, like, it sounds like it is.
Yeah. It was released in 2022. So what you do is you were working autopsy, and I guess the only difference is you're trying to find the demon and then cremate it, but you're still going through the marks.
Oh, there's demons involved in it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's for sure.
One of the bodies move around. One of the bodies come out, or some of the bodies start moving. You're trying to find signs of possession and burn the right one, but you're still looking over all the injuries. You're still doing the mortuary assistant. You're still, putting the eye caps in, you're sewing up the lips, and then you're trying to figure out which demon is haunting you.
Okay, that game is for sure a ripoff of this movie.
Yes.
So, movie people, feel free to sue the game people and give me a cut, because we have just figured this out for you.
Yes. But yeah, I was watching it. I was messaging, Metzo from the other channel, right? And she's playing this game. Like, you need to watch this movie and tell me I'm not the only one that sees this.
For sure. It's a ripoff. Yeah. I want my cut. If I find out about a lawsuit and I'm not named, I'm going to be upset.
All right. But let's get, that's kind of my low. It's not a low point for the movie. It's a low point for the game, though, for in my mind.
Well, no, low point for the movie is, again, like, you're leaving this poor lady by herself on her first day to intake corpses. I mean, you don't even know if she's okay with the corpses yet. There's no way that she would be doing this by herself on her first day, and then nevertheless her second day where all these horrible things are happening. Yes. There's no way, like, as soon as that attack happened, as soon as someone snuck in and attacked her, her supervisor should have been there to take over for her shift immediately. There is no way, no way that administrative staff would not have called her boss.
Correct.
And in no scenario would the boss have not been there. I don't care how shitty he is. He would have been there.
Yeah.
2, there's no hospital that has no one working there at night. I don't care what you say. I mean, they showed, like, the one other nurse, like, on another floor, and I guess there was a couple people around, but, like, there's no way that no one else is in this entire morgue area the entire time. 3, what is up with the goofy AI? There's, like, every time she takes a picture, image uploaded. Every time she fails a picture, image failed. Like, what fucking computer talks to you while you're doing that shit? Like, that would drive me insane. Like, picture taken. Hey, thanks. Appreciate that. You don't need to tell me every fucking time.
Yeah.
Like, and the alarm that goes off when somebody is there for the intake. I mean, it's going to give me a heart attack if I work there. Oh,
yeah. It is very, very loud and jarring.
Right. But again, as much as I love the setup of this place, like, I love the atmosphere look of it, but, like, ridiculous. There's no way a morgue would take up that much space. I mean, like, a morgue in a regular hospital is, like, 2 rooms. That's it. But this is like, it looks like an entire office building built around the morgue. That's what it looks like. Like, the lobby has the same look as the morgue does.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those are my low points. But I mean, overall, not bad. I wouldn't say it's a bad movie.
No, it's not a bad movie, but yeah, I mean, you're right. I'm surprised, I guess flies don't probably bother you as much as bigger bugs.
Well, I can't let flies bother me because they're everywhere. Yeah.
But, poor Carrot Top security guy, but you're right. He's like, he disappeared. And the other guy's like, I can't leave my position here. This is Boston.
Well, okay, yeah. If a security guard,
2 security guards,
right? If a security guard leaves and is not back at his post in, like, an hour, there's no way he didn't call his home office and they would send another person out there.
Right.
Again, I used to be a security guard. Okay. And I would work in a little guardhouse by myself. Yes. But I was never allowed to not have someone there. Like, if I had to leave for an emergency or whatever, I was not allowed to leave until someone came to relieve me. Like that's just them's the rules. So like if somebody disappears
Yeah.
for like an hour, yeah, you'd report that and somebody else would come to replace you. It would probably be your boss looking to see what the hell happened.
Right. Yeah, it's the empty hospital syndrome. Like I said, it made sense in the autopsy of Jane Doe because it's their house.
Right. Yeah, it's their basement of their house. Of course they're not going to have staff and a security guard.
Right.
But yeah, it's like it's just ridiculous. I don't know
Also,
why. I don't know who has
lo-
this idea. Go ahead.
Yeah. Also, saying also the lone EMT. Like that, he's not going to be alone.
Well, again, if somebody calls in sick and there's going to be an EMT team with one person on it, what job are you going to give them? Hauling the dead people because you're not a detriment to the rest of the world if you only have one person in your ambulance. So I can see giving him that job if he's by himself. I get that. I don't think that you can do that though. I mean, I'm pretty sure.
No.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I don't know if you'd be a ride along for somebody else or something. I don't think they would send you out there by yourself. I think there's always a team of two. I mean, I don't know the EMT world. I'm not an EMT. But I would assume I've only ever seen them in twos,
Right. And it's just such a weird restriction to have less people in this movie. It seems to be really what these movies go for to hospitals.
And okay, well, why
severely skeleton crew?
Yeah, why would the intake person like have to go out to the parking garage?
No, like, they should have a badge and they should be able to get them on the cart. First off, you should be able to take the probably out of the vehicle yourself because it's made to be done by one person if necessary.
Yeah, again,
and then they should have the back, the freight elevator back entrance essentially, and then you bring them the corpse to the morgue.
Right. Yeah, like I don't understand why the morgue would have to come to you. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. I understand why they did that for the movie. Like I get that, because otherwise it would be hard for that guy to sneak in.
Yeah,
I understand that, but it's just a very goofy setup.
Logistically, this place makes no sense.
Yeah, again, yeah, it's like obviously I don't think it was filmed in a real hospital. If it was, great, but I don't think it was. I think it was like I don't know. It looked like an office dungeon that it was filmed in, but cool place, not realistic for a morgue.
Yes. All right. Any other little points, or do we want to go to our ratings?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So once again, number of coroners bells out of 10. This movie, hands down, was the worst of the three for me. I don't think necessarily any fault of its own. But I'm probably going down to. I mean, it's not awful. So I'm going 7 coroners bells out of 10. How about you?
I'll agree. It is the worst out of the three, but that's not really fair considering the other two are really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the worst out of the three, but it's still not a bad movie overall. No. It's solid. There's a lot of things that don't make sense, but overall, I mean, it's a decently enjoyable watch,
Mm-hmm.
Would I want to watch it again? Probably not. But it was I don't regret watching it the first time. It was decent enough. So I'll give it a 5.5 coroners bells out of
10. 5.5?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, for movies, usually when we pick stuff like this, we get burned by at least one of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
With random movies that we have never seen. This is a surprisingly good week. That's really.
Yeah, like I said, this last one was the worst, but again, a 5.5 is not. It's not a bad movie. It's just not a great movie.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, let's go ahead. We'll wrap this up here. So, everyone listening, grab your chainsaw, bury the dead, burn the book, and be groovy. All hail to the king, baby, as we prepare for Evil Dead Rise and going back to visit the original trilogy. It's my franchise, right?
I don't know if it's yours, but I'll let you say.
Well,
I'll let you have it.
It's my favorite, so we may be long in the tooth on this. I could probably do all 3 movies from memory, but we'll see. But we're doing the original trilogy that starred Bruce Campbell, directed by Sam Raimi, produced by Robert Tappert, in preparation for Evil Dead Rise. We'll be doing the next 2 Evil Dead movies and reviewing them, and probably even including, because it's just 2 movies, our last fan standing trivia game with Bruce Campbell, right? We might as well throw that in there too, just for his little extra bonus. But yeah, so stay tuned for that. So that's next week. And remember, we watch bad movies, so you don't have to. And this has been Graveyard saying, have you checked on the children?
This is Salem saying, long live the new flesh.
Good night.
Good night.